Today on the CRISS CROSS CINEMA PODCAST, what possibly can be the connection between Paddington and Captain America Winter Soldier on the CRISS CROSS CINEMA PODCAST.
Two fellows meet accidentally, like you and me. No connection between them at all. Never saw each other before. They swap murders. Crisscross.
Wilson! I'm sorry, Wilson!
A day may come when the courage of men fails, but it is not this day.
You gotta keep breathing, because tomorrow the sun will rise. Who knows what the tide could bring?
Hello and welcome to the CRISS CROSS CINEMA PODCAST, where we crisscross cinema history to find connections you may have never noticed. Try and spot them along with us. Today, what do a 3-foot bear and a 6-foot super soldier have in common in Paddington and Captain America Winter Soldier? Hi, I'm Aaron Wilson, writer, director, and brand new Paddington fan.
I'm Mark Klobus, who's not quite ready for his close-up, Mr. DeMille.
My name is David Kelly. I'm a writer, and I'm also a new Paddington fan. I couldn't believe how much I liked it.
Yeah, that's great. I'm just going to point out this is the first time we're using video. So, you're welcome, Internet. Today, just as always, we'll review our two films, then we go crisscross to compare and contrast. Just like always, we'll be diving deep. Fair warning, here there be spoilers. Now our review of Paddington.
My first question is, did they crib this opening from Up? Because you watch the opening of Paddington, and it's this black and white film, kind of old-timey newsreel from the 19 whatevers, and it's, the explorer going into, into the jungles of South America.
Darkest Peru.
Yeah, darkest Peru, but it just struck me as having such such Up vibes, and how they, not only that, but the whole premise of it, the explorer who goes into the jungles of South America, encounters something remarkable, brings back news of it, and yet nobody will end up, as we find out later in the movie, nobody ends up believing him for it.
Yeah.
And the premise was like, I can't help but wonder if, when they were figuring out how to do it, it was kind of, hey, that was such a great opening for a film. Let's go ahead and do that one.
Yeah, but rather than talking dogs, they have talking bears.
Exactly. So,
and I love the Swiss Family Robinson vibe of their treehouse.
Yeah, totally.
Although it's interesting how it gets to, I think one of the things that really makes this such a great, so much more than a kid's movie. And I think this gets to, why I think you like the two, I'm a fan of the movie, is that there's this whole thing, that there's this whole imperialism subtext. And here you have how this guy shows up, and, you could say he civilizes the bears. You could also say he corrupts the bears. And of course, the analogy, the comparison here that I'm thinking of is with an older series, Babar, which is
Babar the Elephant.
Babar the Elephant, where you have you go back and you read the original book, and it really becomes much more explicit about how, we send these Europeans into Africa or, the jungles of South America, and pretty soon we've made them into, these little European archetypes, be they, wearing suits and drinking tea or, making marmalade sandwiches.
Yeah. One of my notes was he's the most British Peruvian bear that I've ever seen.
Exactly. And of course you read those works back then, and this is where you get to Paddington being the books themselves were written at such a very interesting time, because they were right at that point where Britain was like, yeah, we're going to have to give up this whole empire thing for good. Mm-hmm. But when you read Babar, which was the 1930s, it was much more about how, this is the way to go. I mean, from a certain perspective, the bears are perfectly happy being bears, and this guy shows up, and pretty soon they're sitting there, 40 years later, they're learning how to turn oranges into marmalade, and they're all speaking with proper accents.
And we meet our main character, who's we didn't see in the footage with Uncle Dumbledore, and I don't know who the actor is that plays the aunt, but
that's Imelda Staunton, who plays.
Oh, right,
yes,
yeah.
and she plays. The character everyone hates from Harry Potter.
Yeah,
Dolores Umbridge.
Dolores Umbridge. Yeah.
So I mean, it's one of the things it's one of the little fun games you can play with this movie is spot the Harry Potter.
Yeah, and there's a really good reason for that, because director or the producer David Heyman of Heyday Films is the producer of this movie. So
It makes sense. Yeah.
I just thought it was because 90% of all British actors showed up in the Harry Potter franchise in one film or another. So.
It's a small island.
Yes, it is.
Well, I like what you said. The metaphor of, well, I guess not the commentary on imperialism with that, because in a lot of ways it seems like the Bears almost enlightened the explorer. I forget his name. Clyde something.
Oh, shoot.
I thought it was totally going to come back later when he's at the Geographer's
Montgomery
Guild.
Clyde.
Montgomery Clyde, that's what it was. Yeah, Montgomery Clyde. Because he comes back and is like, I'm not going to stuff these people. I'm not going to take their bodies back. He can talk. He can, they have families. They have...
Yeah.
This might be reaching for me, but I almost saw it as like some kind of commentary on like the immigrant experience in addition to imperialism, because when the Geographer's Guild are saying, what do you mean they're civilized? Like, can they play cricket? Do they drink tea? And it's like, well, Paddington does all those things.
Yes.
He comes back and he does all. It's like I thought maybe Nicole Kidman would have asked or echoed that, said something like that she remembered from childhood, and it's fine that they didn't. But
if anything, I feel like she represents in the villain role the classic imperialism
totally,
thing, but
totally.
He's very much against the. Like you just said. How
we're
totally,
gonna kill it and we're gonna pose it for our own entertainment type of thing.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And she's mad just because she wasn't rich. Her dad never became a lord, and she had to work at a petting zoo. So she's it's really her own class aspirations that set her off on all this.
Yeah, but back in the jungle, there's an earthquake, and all the jars of marmalade start breaking.
Heartbreaking, dude.
And I think Uncle Dumbledore ends up underneath a tree.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And then Anton Bridge, sends them off. It's really interesting what she evokes for people who aren't familiar with the history. She talks about how there was this time where
they sent their children off.
Yeah,
to,
that's referencing the Second World War, which is
it's very British. This movie,
but and it's not just that it's British. It's that this is Britain's finest hour, and this gets to something I want to cover. I'm going to cover a bit more in the crisscross, but this is the idea of how the finest hour being Britain at its best, and the idea being that what these bears have internalized is Britain at its finest. Mm-hmm. The civility, the Gambon-esque,
all the ideals of culture.
Yeah, exactly. The Gambon-esque accents, of Englishness. And you see that throughout the movie, is that all these highlights of Britishness. You see, there's the Royal Mail makes an appearance, so many cultural landmarks make an appearance. We're getting Britain at its best.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. In at least the international image of Britain at its best.
Kind of the postcard version of.
Oh, very much so. Yeah, that's exactly
London in particular.
The neighborhood they live in, especially, I like that. Just like the rainbow painted houses,
Mm-hmm. Named after the royal family.
Yeah.
I'd like to just point out real quick, the CG in this movie is amazing. Like for those bears, especially when they're in the jungle. There's one shot where, like right after that tree falls, and she's hugging Paddington over the rubble of all these trees from this earthquake. And her fur, it just looks amazing. Like it's got this ash in it, and it's not completely kempt. And I think his fur throughout the movie, they have it in several states of, like, it goes fuzzy at one point, and then more combed down, and then rougher. Anyway, the CG is amazing.
Oh, totally. I mean, they kind of say, well, I've heard people say, rather that the late or early 2010s were kind of almost like the peak of CGI, just because it was so much more intentional as compared to, like, say, later Marvel movies where they're changing it after they shot it 5 or 6 times and have to just keep generating new elements to just put in there.
And not giving the CG artist enough time to do it properly.
Yeah, wasn't that a big deal when, like, Frozen came out? They were talking about, like, individually generating every one of her hairs on the Ice Princess. So probably similar technology in Paddington, I imagine.
Yeah.
Around the same time.
Yeah, we also have to wonder to what degree it was not just they don't give the CG artist enough time, but I mean, considering how that drives up the cost of these movies.
Yeah.
At what point in terms of trying to, address these things, do they make these films so uneconomical to where it's like, okay, we do need to fix this, but you only have 20 million more to do it with. So, work with what you can get.
Yeah, the CG industry at the moment is in a bit of a mess, but Anyway, so
But not in this
yeah,
film.
not
but then so Paddington gets on a boat to go to, I was going to say America, not
Merry old England,
to
let's say that.
merry old England, yes. And his aunt sends him off, and she's like, "I'm going to go to the bear retirement
Yeah.
home," and
Which I like that too. That was fun.
Yeah.
That was a good.
Yeah, which you kind of think you're inclined to think is the equivalent of going to a farm upstate type of thing, that
Yeah.
she's actually going to go off and pass away, but it turns out that we do see
she
that
meant it quite literally.
exactly
Yeah.
that there was indeed such a place. So. Which I imagine they had to do there. I like how they say that reveal through the very end. So
Yeah.
for a while there, you think he's kind of on his own. He's writing letters to
Nobody just
exactly, which I imagine you have to do in a kids' film. So,
Yeah.
totally. They couldn't kill both of his caretakers. That would have been a little too rough.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I kept expecting the dad to pop up,
Yeah.
or the uncle to pop up at some point. He never does. That one stuck. So
But his first stop on his London journey is Paddington Station.
we start to see him right away learning his lessons about life in England, and the first lesson he learns is you don't feed the pigeons.
Yeah.
I love how they do that too. He's being generous. It's interesting too because in a way it's kind of a metaphor for the immigrant experience, which is you want to help them out, but pretty soon there's like boom, there's a bunch of them.
Yeah.
And it's one of those ones where when I was first watching it, I was thinking to myself, I'm getting a mixed message here, and it was one of those ones I had to think about a bit more to kind of appreciate the fact that it's not as mixed as I thought it was. But we'll get to that a little bit later. So
Yeah, that's far more in depth than I thought about the pigeons.
No,
but it's a great setup that's completely
very well.
disguised for at the end when they use the pigeons again.
It's a great moment of empathy. He's like, okay, this probably is an emergency for this pigeon. Like maybe it is. I got to give him that. But it's funny that you said that about the immigrant experience too, because I was really thinking like, if I ever have enough money to burn on something dumb like this, or just become smart enough to use DaVinci Resolve, I would love to put in the score for The Brutalist into Paddington, because it is, just let those ideas just cross a little bit more.
Yeah.
yeah, but let's also keep in mind this is I think it's introduced a little bit earlier. Chekhov's sandwich.
Yeah.
Chekhov's
There's
sandwich.
a lot of Chekhov's things in here. It's just
It's only for
great
emergencies.
setups for amazing payoffs. And those pigeons are very much Chekhov's pigeons.
Yes,
But then we're introduced to the family, Mr. Brown and the Browns, and it's set up right from the start. Mr. Brown is all about safety.
yes, played by Hugh Bonneville, who to me he's like the British Victor Garber. He has a very similar look. And of course, Hugh Bonneville's had that same type of career where he's been in tons of things. He's of course most famous for Downton Abbey, but he's
Oh, yeah,
a
right.
bunch of stuff as well. So, and then you have Sally Hawkins playing the mom. And she's been in a ton of things as well, and you get that interesting coding of where the dad and the daughter are kind of wearing very neutral colors, and the mom and the son are wearing the reds and the warmer colors, and so they're the ones who embrace Paddington.
I hadn't even noticed that. It'll get to the
good.
car joke later on.
That's my favorite part.
And you get that the dad's we're gonna Henry the dad is like don't pay attention to them. That's one of the things I actually loved about earlier was the fact that they recognize he's a bear, and yet it's not a bear. It's like oh, there's a bear. As in like you don't see bears every day in
funny.
London, but they pop up from time
Very
to time.
accepting. Yeah.
Exactly.
Like he's
Don't
he's
look
like
at
he's
that
probably
strange
making,
bear.
Yeah, don't straight bear. If we knew the bear, we could maybe nod or something like that, but we don't make eye contact with the bear.
He's making up this story about the geographer. He just wants money. Like just
Exactly.
He's not washed. He's
He starts in explaining his story, and he's like, "Oh, he's just panhandling."
And
it's
yet,
great.
the mom treats him to a meal, and we see it really is interesting too because you can appreciate Henry's perspective because the bear is sitting there and he's just so sloppy and he's covered in food, and it's just such a disruptive experience, and yet and he's trying to find a way to we're gonna be open to him if we can. And then eventually his wife is like, we're going to do it. And we need to name him something, and she's the one who figures out that his name should be Ketchup. Oh, no, not Ketchup.
yeah.
Yeah, there's that great shot of looking out the window past Paddington to see Paddington Station over top of him, and that sign is like, oh, he's labeled
Yes.
Paddington.
And then so they go off to their home, and we get the an equivalent of the hop on hop off bus tour where we get to see some of the various sites, and they're being
Little
driven.
postcard.
Yeah, exactly. It's all
things they
postcard
drive
shots,
past.
and you also get a shot at that in that montage of the writer who wrote the Paddington novel.
Oh, okay.
That's cool.
That's
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
Well, I love how the cab driver kind of like rips him off too. He said it's his first time in London. I wanted to show him the sights. He just obviously took the longest route he could.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, did you? This comes up later, but the license plate.
yeah.
I
something-
love that license plate.
I don't
Cab die.
remember what it said.
It's
Cab die or
CAB
IE.
Yeah, so it
which
says
looks like
cabbie.
Cabby, exactly.
Yeah.
So
Oh, I'm dumb. I thought it said cab die because Nicole Kidman like throws him in a river later.
yeah.
But I guess cabby
Clever
makes more sense.
foreshadowing.
Yeah,
It kind of works both ways if you think about it. So
Which is a great segue into our villain, Nicole Kidman.
Dude, talk about range, man. Oh my goodness. I
Yeah.
mean,
well, actually, before we get to that,
Yeah.
I do want to cover the whole acclimation sequence we get, where Paddington is settling in. There's kind of this weird thing where Mary, I think it's the daughter. I'm trying to remember which one Mary is. 'Cause I have Mary in my notes. I didn't put down which one's which. But
Judy is the daughter.
okay, yeah. So Mary, she kind of shames Paddington into freshening up. And this idea that
that's what people typically do.
Yeah, but I mean,
You know?
He's a bear.
Yeah, exactly. This is what bears typically do. Yeah, I mean, as we see from the way he uses those ear cleaning sticks, that it's been a while since he's done this.
Yes.
Now, this is where we get to the whole mixed signals thing, because I found myself, and maybe it's because I'm older, empathizing with Henry's point. He's coming in. He trashes their bathroom. He does all this damage to the place, and I had to think about it to appreciate that. It's actually the fact that he's making an effort.
Totally.
They're like, we're welcoming you, but we do want you to we kind of hoping you do these things. And so throughout the film, he's doing that. He's aspiring to acceptance through adaptation.
Totally.
Yeah.
And he's trying to get it right. So he sees those two brushes, in the kitchen, in the bathroom. He's like, these look like ear brushes. And that's when he does the whole ear thing. And he's trying to figure this stuff out. And it really is this nice thing where he's working to, acclimate himself to a different culture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's also this idea that, maybe they should acclimate to him, and, Mary and her son do it, pretty much straight away. And I think this gets to a point that you're going to be bringing up later, how it takes Henry, the dad, and Sally a little bit longer
Yeah.
to do that.
Yeah. So the dad especially is the biggest foil of the movie, which is a character that's there to be the opposite of the main character, to give it contrast, so what this character is about. And Paddington is a whirlwind of whimsy.
Yeah.
That's
He's also like the bar that when he's accepted Paddington, that Paddington's triumphed.
Yeah.
Because it certainly isn't coming from Millicent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just blown away by how good Nicole Kidman was in this movie.
Yeah, for sure.
And apparently they wrote the role with her in mind.
Oh, that's cool. That's
I mean, this thing, Nicole Kidman is this outstanding actress. They've given her an Oscar. She does all this great stuff. And yet I feel like she needs to play villains more often because she's so good at it.
Well, I thought she adapted like so well to like being in a very cartoonish kids movie. Just like the way she walks a little bit different, just the way she's like, she knows exactly what kind of movie she is and what kind of tone it calls for. It's a great villain.
Yeah, her whole story is just, I love the low stakes espionage element of it.
Yes.
Of her just like breaking into offices where the security guards are just
Blow darts.
quizzing about nutrition facts on the back of the thing. That's how
71.5
boring they
grams.
are. It's like, this is a high stakes place. And then breaking into a suburban house and
Oh yeah. Flirting with the creepy weird neighbor, just all the spy hits,
One of the things I was struck by was her outfits.
Oh,
because and the one, of course, that stands out is the one where she's later trying to break into the Crown's home.
Yeah,
and she's wearing the snakeskin coat. And there's kind of like that element of Cruella de Vil about her.
Oh, right, yeah.
And another character from the kids' literature there, and how she is very much like that. You get the impression she not only is she a taxidermist, but she that she kind of takes that whole exploitation thing to heart, and it's in a way that's subtle, but it kind of underscores her villainy. Mm-hmm. For her, animals are not are not these wonderful creatures to be appreciated. They're things to be gutted and displayed and worn.
Objects.
Yeah, objects to be exploited and not, creatures to be appreciated.
And they do a great job of hinting at that, which isn't revealed till later on, but like just you don't know who she's working for, what her deal is until the very end that you realize, but we'll get there when we get there.
But you bring up Mr. Curry and and he's played by
it's a curmudgeon, but I don't know the actor's name. I'm not as familiar with British actors as you guys. I'm very impressed.
I don't know his name.
That's what kills me is the fact that it's like I had him in mind, and now I totally blanked on him. But he was in the thick of it. He's been in a bunch of things, and it's a little too on the nose, that scene, that line that he does about how he's talking about jungle music.
Is it Capaldi?
That's hilarious.
That was Peter Capaldi.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, and he's such a wonderful actor.
The jungle.
Yeah, it's just like that's sort of kind of like it's a little cringy there, but you get he's such a great embodiment of the fear of multiculturalism. And what I thought was especially interesting is that he has an arc, but he comes to it so late.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I think his arc is, in a lot of respects, the most contemporary one. It's the idea that he has this fear of multiculturalism. Mm-hmm. He doesn't want them there. He eventually realizes his error, but at that point, he comes to it a little too late. Mm-hmm. And I think that's in that sense that's where you get the commentary a bit more overt. And of course, it's something that ends up that Millicent very effectively exploits.
Well, totally, because I agree with what you said about his much more contemporary arc, because he is kind of like this, and Nicole Kidman does kind of radicalize him. Preys on his weaknesses of just loneliness to get him to help kidnap this bear, but he really only thinks they're just taking it back to the forest or the jungle. He doesn't. I love she has the van that says taxi, but then she closes the door and it says taxidermy. Like that was that was a lot of fun. That was really good.
But of course, we do get an example of a successful example of assimilation in Samuel Gruber, Jim Broadbent's character. Who is?
Oh right, yeah. I loved his character.
Oh, he has such, and I want
assimilation to the except for the way that he uses common phrases, which I loved how they use that.
But I mean, you take two of the most English things imaginable, tea and trains, and you combine them into this wonderful little model train that goes riding around his antique shop
every day at 11.
Tea and cakes.
Yeah, he's like, "You're pulling my legs off. If luck has smiled on your face." I just love that. I don't know. I wish he was in more stuff, and I guess he does a lot of comedy stuff. But
Jim Broadbent. I mean, he's one of the best things about Hot Fuzz, which is quite something considering it's such a stacked cast.
Yeah.
So, but you also have that great scene where you have, and this kind of demonstrates Paddington's goodness, which is where Paddington sees the pickpocket. And he mistakenly assumes that it's his wallet, but we get an example of how we get the inversion of the trope about the claim about how immigrants bring crime. We have here a native Englishman who is committing crimes, and he's stopped by the immigrants.
Yeah. And the other thing with that, this is kind of the movie boiled down into a nutshell. This scene where he's he thinks the guy's lost his wallet, so he runs after him. He thinks he's chasing him, and then he's got the whimsy of like he's got the police helmet on now, and he's like, some kind of police bear, and then we've got this whole chase, and by the end of it, all the wallets fall out, and he's like, "Oh, he's got," and it turns out that he's just by being a small whimsical bear, he's caught this crazy pickpocket, and he's stopped him right in front of the school. And Judy and her classmates are looking out the window, and they're like, "Do you know that bear?" And she's like, "Yeah, he lives in my house." And so she kind of gets some popularity from it. And
well, that's actually where you I mean, it's there's a little bit of a criticism there, because it's when she's asked that by the boy she has the crush on.
Oh, right.
And she's about to say no, and then he says something like, "Well, he's awesome," and then she's like, "Well, I can use this to my advantage."
Yeah,
and that's how she warms up to Paddington.
Yeah, but like he just improves things around him just by being himself, basically,
which is part of the message of the movie.
Yeah.
So, but they do have to make him more acceptable. So the kids and Mrs. Bird, played by another Harry Potter alum, and that would be Julie Waters, who plays Molly Weasley in the series.
Mm-hmm.
They give him a full, proper scrub, and they give him a proper English duffel coat. So now he's being increased. It's like the more they accept him, the more they anglicize him.
Yeah. Which he, as I pointed out, he's already pretty anglicized.
Yeah, right.
The most anglicized Peruvian bear I've ever seen.
Yeah, right. It is like his kind of superhero suit up moment, though, isn't it? When they give him the coat and his little Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
I just wanted to jump back to the antique shop owner real quick and point out a plot device that, again, I've said this guy's name a million times, but Brian McDonald, it's his term of a clone character. He's basically Paddington, but he's adapted.
True, huh?
So this is what Paddington could become, basically. And
he collects little things. He likes to notice little details about things. He's very
mostly him being an immigrant, and he's adapted.
Sure,
and Paddington is trying to adapt to his surroundings. Yeah. But then we'll get to the end and realize they do that great misdirect of you think, oh, Paddington's gonna change by the end. It's like, nope, that's not in the cards.
Yeah.
So.
But and of course that visit to Gruber is important, because this is where we begin to get the clues of who the explorer is, because Paddington, and we haven't really discussed this, the hat that he's wearing is the hat that the explorer left with the bears.
Yeah.
And it turns out that there's a label on there for the Geographers Guild, so Henry,
which was conveniently all covered up with dirt.
Yes.
Yeah.
And probably some dried marmalade.
Yeah, probably.
Yum.
And how they go to the Geographers Guild, and was there an expedition to darkest Peru, and turns out that there was none, but there must have been one. So we have to have a scene with some classic English drag.
Yeah. The nice heist into the place with the perfect foil characters of Paddington and the dad, and he does not want to be there. And
the discomfort is reflected in the fact that he has to dress up as a woman.
Yeah. Well, before we get into that sequence, I love the elevator scene where he's basically saying Paddington is lying about this whole thing, and he just stares at him. He's like, "What are you doing?" It's very uncomfortable.
When people have forgotten their manners.
Yeah. It's called a hard stare. Yeah. That's great. It's so, I don't know,
so British.
Just
how quiet disapproval can make people better.
Yeah.
But he finds out through their spot of espionage that there was indeed an expedition, but it's been covered up.
Yeah.
But they do find this
file deleted.
Yeah.
In the film they get. Yeah.
Yeah, they find
And I love when they type it in the computer. They type darkest Peru.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it comes up.
Now, Peru is darkest Peru. So.
Yeah.
But we also have, and so what we're seeing at this point is we're seeing these two characters are kind of coming toward one another. You have Paddington and you have Millicent, and how, as you know, because Paddington, of course, will eventually, what turns out what he's looking for, although he doesn't know it yet, is Millicent in a sense. But it's Millicent's also on the hunt for Paddington. You should point out that she tranquilizes the security at Paddington Station so she can review the footage. She, as you're pointing out, she tortures the cabbie and until she finds out, it's a code, and she's getting ready to. Oh no, it's not really much of a code.
And she's so serious about the super spy about this very mundane plot.
But
it's great. The comedy is just top tier.
Finding a talking teddy bear,
Yeah, basically.
And then she basically, she sees that Ray is, smitten with her, so she exploits that with a little bit of feminine seduction and some coded language, as you were pointing out. So that way, she's kind of made him her not quite accomplice, her minion.
Yeah.
And even though that's not how I'm sure he sees it, but then that's where we get the great break-in scene.
Yeah.
Which is and it's interesting. I couldn't help but think that is that in the scene, Peter Capaldi, his character refers to her as Honeypot, and the association into the pot. Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah.
I wonder if this is like a Winnie the Pooh.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Or something like that.
Well, that's what they call.
You can't not reference it of the most British bear you've ever seen.
Yeah.
Well, totally. That's another one of those triple entendres too, because honeypot is also what they call when a spy seduces someone to get something out of them. So it's
okay. I didn't know that.
They're really hitting those triple entendres, and I love how they never really step outside of. Paddington rather never steps out of his understanding of the world. And they're like, what started this fire? In the break-in scene, it's like, oh, well, it had the head of an elephant and the body of a snake, because she's wearing the snakeskin coat and stuff like that. With
the gas mask.
Yeah, they're like, Paddington, what are you talking about, man? Just, a bit to the...
It's especially interesting because it was one of those old-style gas masks with the breathing
hangs.
So you have that, you have the note, you have the nozzle and everything, and not just the the mask that you typically see nowadays.
And in that scene, I'm going to do a callback to our Jason Bourne episode. The Paddington kind of is the accidental Jason Bourne of bears. Where he basically causes a gas explosion that takes out the bad guy.
He's got to choose his own name. He's got to...
But I had thought about that one too. It's good. Well, it gets chosen for him, really. So, but it's so. But of course, because his description is so implausible, and of course, Paddington. They're so used to Paddington making a mess. Henry, tells his wife, Paddington's got to go. She kind of recognizes. She acknowledges that there is a safety issue. And so Paddington decides he's got to go off and do this on his own. He's going to find all the M. Clydes in the city.
Yeah. And meanwhile, the kids are overhearing this on the stairs. And he's talking to the daughter, and she... Oh, no, okay, so it's the housekeeper, Miss Weasley, comes in. I don't know the character's name.
Mrs. Bird.
Yeah, Mrs. Bird. She tells them in flashback that he used to be a really cool guy, and he's driving a motorcycle up to the hospital with his pregnant wife about to deliver, and then as they come out, it's a new car, and it's just like a beige station wagon, and
not just any station wagon, a Volvo.
Yeah.
As we remember from it to me it invoked that line from The Rock about how where Nicolas Cage's character is like, I drive a Volvo, a beige one. It's like the safest car imaginable.
And he's like, this is our new car. And she's like, but it's beige. And he's like, it's a calm, comforting color.
Yeah.
Get in. It's I love that scene. They do a great job of writing that line of him being a cartoon and him being very understandable where he's coming from.
Yeah.
But
It's very convenient that all these, you have that wonderful scene where he has the addresses, he looks up and you see this shot of it's not even London. It's a portion of London. It's the core part called the city. And conveniently, all of these M. Clydes live in the city, it seems. So they're all within walking distance. Because if you ever visit London, London is enormous. I mean, in what we think of as London, the postcard part of it, it really is kind of that core of like the city, Westminster, South Bank, and so forth. But this one here, it's everything's conveniently because he's on the South Bank, which doesn't really track with where the Browns live. But that's
they've got to be close enough together to have those little
exactly. So
up.
it's like they live here, live here, live. And the thing is, the city's not actually the most residential part of London either, but. Again, we'll set that aside.
Yeah.
He's got the nice little montage of him going around, checking all the M. Clydes and finding that none of them. I love how the last one, he gets there, the misdirect.
Yeah. The 6 fell over to a 9 or so.
Yeah, exactly.
Other way around,
So, it's so well done. And of course, it's always the last place you look.
Yeah.
So.
Before we get there, though, I want to point out the guard scene. It's so great.
Oh, right.
Like it's raining and he's got to find somewhere to. And he stops in front of the guard station
At Buckingham Palace.
Buckingham Palace, where he's got the big hat.
Yeah.
And you know what those hats are made out of?
Is it bear fur? Oh my God, that's terrible.
Jeez. Okay. Maybe they didn't know that when they were filming.
That's hilarious. That's a great dark joke if they did know.
It is. Oh yeah, I'm sure they do. But it's also interesting about how he's about to eat his sandwich, and the guard offers him one.
Yeah.
And where's the guard pull that sandwich from?
Out of his head. I want that sandwich so much.
Yeah.
It looked so good.
So, and of course, because
he's got tea in there, he's got cookies in there.
Exactly. It's all cap. He can just keep a
got a bottle of wine up in there.
But this is how we find out that Millicent is Montgomery Clyde's daughter.
Yeah.
And initially, of course, she's
at the last house.
Yeah. She's at the last house. She makes the connection for Paddington that she's his daughter. And it's like, well, I'm happy to make you the home. And then they go to the Natural History Museum, and that's when he finds out that there's this, the design that she has for him, which is to, kill him, stuff him, and mount him on display. Yeah. He will become the trophy vindicating her father, and I
don't know if she cares so much about vindicating her father as getting her, because she hates her father for not taking a trophy to begin with, but now she's going to get the glory for it.
And of course, this is when Curry's decency kicks in. You have that wonderful scene where he's calling the Browns and letting them know what's happening. He's trying to do sort of fake voice, and Henry instantly knows who it is. It's Curry doing a fake voice.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Even I love it's just such a simple thing too, but just showing all the tree that's painted behind their stairway, just how all the flowers go as soon as Paddington leaves. That little.
Oh, I hadn't noticed that.
Oh yeah, they do it in a little like CGI thing where the flowers just kind of float away.
I missed that because I compared the tree at the beginning and the end. I didn't think to compare it in that scene. Huh. I have to go back and check that out.
Dude, I couldn't believe how much I liked this movie. Like I know I'd heard it was like a meme that like Paddington was great. There was like some comedians I knew about, and the Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, they talk about Paddington a little bit, and I was just like, okay, yeah, I'm sure it's good, but it's like, no, this is fantastic. I haven't seen a kids movie this good in so long.
Well, my brother wasn't on board with that. Yeah. I'm going to just say what he said real quick, and we'll move on from it. But I'm going to read what he wrote, or what he said. He's like, he's a stupid bear that everything he does is an accident. And I'm like, you're an accident. And then he cried and walked away. Anyway, but he's right. But I love that accidental whimsy of the whole thing.
Yeah, he could, like, I would love to, I mean, speaking of Paddington and like Jason Bourne and The Brutalist, like, I think Paddington could get through either of those situations just fine. You know, be like, oh dear. oh bother, just
Al-
bumbling through.
Although in this case, he really needs the Browns to survive.
Yeah.
And one of the things I love is how you see the growth of all the characters in the rescue sequence.
Yeah,
That-
sure.
that-
They
yeah.
utilize them all, huh?
Yeah, having Paddington in their lives has allowed them to blossom as people. So Judy gets to exercise her language skills. The
Proof she was listening to her mom, saying we can go through the sewers because it connects to anywhere in the city. It was,
And the dad, just as the son is about to switch the lights off with the big switch, he's like, "That's 500,000 volts," and he's like,
yeah.
"Okay, do it." And
Yeah.
and then he goes and hangs off the building and everything. Yeah, we see how they've all prospered and benefited from Paddington's presence in their lives.
Yeah.
Well, because even their nanny or the maid totally stops being prim and proper for a minute to drink the bottle of rum with the security guard, and I love when she takes out the second bottle. he's just like, man,
Well, the first bottle's not enough. We'll use one more. So, and this is when Millicent goes full villain, and because you have they rescue Paddington. They're trying to get out of the museum. She corners them on the roof, and you have that great speech by Henry, and that's when he's embraces his transformation, where he says, "It doesn't matter that he comes from the other side of the world, or that he's a different species, or that he has a worrying marmalade habit. We love Paddington, and that makes him family." And then he's, basically, if you're gonna, kill him, you're gonna have to kill us. And then she's like, okay.
And then it's great how they play this, just the plot elements that build up the scene of, it seems like they're done for because they've got Spy Lady on them and they're just this family that, and then right at the last minute, you see these pigeons, and it's like, oh, the pigeons! And he pulls the marmalade sandwich out of his hat. What does he do? I think he throws it.
It's his last request before she kills him. He's like, all right, just let me have this emergency sandwich.
And that's why you say those things for emergencies. And so, and then
the best Chekhov sandwich of the movie.
Right.
But of course, it's not enough to take her out. She's hanging there, and then that's when Mrs. Bird shows up. Three sheets to the wind, and she knocks Millicent off the roof. So
seems like she almost I believe that she didn't even know what she was doing when she opened up that hatch too. She just knocks on. She's like, hey,
I don't think she did.
Then she sees it.
So. But then you have, and then you get the climax of the film, which is, Paddington finds a home with the Browns.
Yeah.
There's that wonderful concluding message about acceptance. Mrs. Brown says that in London, everyone is different, and that means anyone can fit in.
Yeah.
I think she must be right, because although I don't look like anyone else, I really do feel at home. I'll never be like other people, but that's all right, because I'm a bear called Paddington.
And it works, because I was tearing up for this line. I'm like, why am I tearing up? I didn't break down the plot mechanics of it very well, but it got to me, and I'm like, what is it? But the whole message of the movie is just be yourself and you'll make the world a better place around you. And they boiled it down into that thing where I didn't even know what was happening as they said the line, me being a screenwriter. And I'm like, oh, that's how it works. It just subconsciously gets into you, and it makes you tear up, and you're like, why am I tearing up about this stupid bear line? I don't even know what he's saying.
Totally.
And it's great about how everyone who embraced Paddington grew.
Yeah.
And then the one person who refused to grow, Millicent, she ends up
started
being buried in animal poop. It was one of those very satisfying, antagonist endings where she's sitting there.
Very Biff Tannen.
Yeah, exactly. I knew there was an
Back to the Future.
I didn't make that connection. So,
Paddington's incredible.
Although I think that's more poop than Biff got buried in.
Well, it depends upon which time. I mean, he got buried multiple times.
That's true.
So.
So that's Paddington. Mm-hmm. And now a review of Captain America: Winter Soldier. On your left.
I love it. Does that fit the definition of a meet cute? that whole opening
Maybe,
sequence.
yeah.
Probably, huh? Yeah.
Yeah, it's just it's so well done. I mean, you get that great setting of the mall in Washington, and you get the two of them running, and it really, I think, gets to Anthony Mackie. It's fascinating how this is the first Marvel movie he does, and he just fits seamlessly in.
Yeah,
Totally.
feels like he's been there the whole time. It almost feels like when he starts talking to him under that tree, that he has. You're like, okay, I don't remember seeing him, but it feels like he's been here the whole time.
Right, yeah, because I mean, he does feel just like Captain America. I mean, he can even like contextualize why this guy doesn't feel comfortable in this new time. He's like, oh, your bed's too soft, huh?
Yeah.
You're used to like having to live this like hard life, and now that you're just trying to live like a normal person, you can't do it. So I mean, they must have been planning on him taking over when they cast him, because like 10 movies later he's Captain America. But
and then they show the list of the things that he's got to catch up on, further emphasizing how out of place he is in
Star
the
Wars and
modern
Thai
world.
food and
apparently versions abroad, each list is
a different list for each country.
Yeah.
oh, that's interesting. That'd be fun to see.
So like the French list is different, and the German list is different, and so forth. So, and of course their budding connection is interrupted by Natasha Romanoff driving up in a Corvette, and she has this line that I wanted to quote because it's interesting about how it kind of it's both a line that foreshadows what's happening, but it's also one that underscores both that alienation that Rogers has and how it really is very different from that of Sam Wilson's. Hey, fellas, either one of you know where the Smithsonian is? I'm here to pick up a fossil.
Yeah.
He really is this artifact out of time, and which they then kind of do another nod to a little bit later on, but it really is this interesting kind of neg that obviously she gets away with because she and Rogers are comrades, but still it's a little harsh. So what here he is trying to assimilate. He's taking notes literally.
Although it is great writing of character setup.
Yeah.
Oh, it is.
So
It is. I mean,
she might be a little harsh, but yeah.
In the way that people who have that bond can be towards one another.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you get that whole, and I also like the fact that throughout the movie, she's the running joke of her trying to set him up with various people.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
And how they're in the plane, and he's very professional with the Shield strike team.
Yeah.
And she's still trying to set him up, and he's trying to, what about, what are you doing Saturday night? And he talks about the barbershop quartet all being, all being dead.
Which is an interesting thing that they picked up on of like, it's hard for him to find dates because he's got so little
In common.
I think he's he not much shared life and experience is what he says, but
And that's where you get to this interesting thing later on, where you get the impression they hint at the idea of him having a deeper emotional connection with Romanoff, the Black Widow, and you get that with the kiss and then the banter. And apparently, Chris Evans and Scarlett Johansson improvised that dialogue.
Yeah, oh, that's good.
Oh,
That's
cool.
cool.
Which I think gets to both their familiarity with the characters of it. At this point, this is the third film in his case. I think third film, maybe fourth film in her case. Iron Man 2.
Yeah,
Iron
Iron
Man
Man
2.
2.
Avengers.
That was third for both of them.
So third for both of them. So, so they know the characters very well, and they've already done one film together, and they have good chemistry.
Yeah.
And it really works. But you end that conversation with him, and this to me it's like one of the low key awesome scenes. He jumps out of a plane, and the strike guy says to Rumlow, "Is he wearing a parachute?" No.
Yeah, oh, he's not. Yeah,
That's cool. Yeah, and then the score for this action scene is so great. And the score for the entire movie is just, it's kind of, it knows what it's being. It's not like the World War II movie of the previous one where it plays the do, 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 do. It's very Bourne-esque. It's got that spy thriller thing to it.
that of course was very conscious. The Russo brothers were saying we're going to invoke the 70s conspiracy.
3 Days
thrillers.
of the Condor.
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, they got Robert Redford. I can't even imagine how much that must have cost.
Which I almost paired this
you know.
movie with like 3 Days of the Condor. Or
That's a
like
classic.
something like that, which is the more obvious connection. But you guys will see the connection between these two when we get to it.
But the mission is that there is this shield vessel in the Indian Ocean that has been seized by pirates, and they're demanding a ransom from Shield, and the mission is to defeat the pirates. And so Captain America goes on board, and he's taking out the majority of them. I love the scene where it's like the one guy has the bead on him, and before Rogers can do his thing, the guy gets shot. It's interesting to see.
Yeah.
Rogers is sitting here and immobilizing the pirates. He's knocking them out.
Mm-hmm.
And the SHIELD strike team and even Black Widow are killing them.
Well, there is that one guy that he hits really hard and he knocks over the side of the ship.
Yeah.
But aside from that,
Yeah, the one that he rushes when he's going along.
Yeah.
But for the most part, the thing is, the guy falls in the water, but I mean, they can still fish him out, presumably. But it really is the difference in contrast that Rogers is, his values are a little bit different,
right?
Totally.
Yeah.
than the ones in the present. But man, he just cleans through those pirates,
including real life superhero UFC legend George St. Pierre. It's cool to see him in there. They tried to make him like a regular Captain America villain now, and I doubt he'll be in the next one, but he should be. He's fun. It's fun for the fans to see him.
And he's and I mean, for people who haven't read the comics, Batroc the Leaper is one of the oldest Captain America adversaries in the. When they brought him back in the 1960s, he was one of the first ones they introduced.
Oh, that's cool.
So,
I didn't know he was playing a specific comic character.
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was, that's cool.
It's a Marvel movie. You got
Right.
It's like there's a Marvel character. That's a reference to a character somewhere because they do so much fan service in that way, and yet they don't make it too over the top. They don't have him like dressed up in a silly costume or something like that. He's just this guy Batroc, and then you see the leaper part and the fact that his fighting style is very much with his legs.
Yeah,
and he does these great
crazy
flips
hops
over.
Exactly. So, although it's interesting about how you see, the way that he is able to goad Rogers into giving up the shield. I thought you were more than a shield, and rather than saying, I'm here to win, he's like, okay, I'm going to put the shield away and
take off his helmet.
Yeah,
he's still hardcore. He might be a good guy deep down who doesn't want to hurt anybody, but he likes to get his hands dirty. He has fun with the process,
Yeah. And I love that they play most of this movie without his helmet on. It's more of a Steve Rogers thing than it is him as Captain America.
That's a great point. Yeah.
But I mean, of course, he exemplifies everything that Captain America is. But
that also explains why at the end he's in the climactic scene he's wearing the helmet throughout most of it.
Oh yeah,
because it is what he represents. But we'll get to that.
True. Yeah. Even the moment he takes it off in the end too, that kind of makes sense. That's okay.
Yeah. So, but we find out that at the climax of the fight with Batroc that Romanoff has her own separate mission, and this is you get the impression that the role that Rogers is playing is one he's not comfortable with. When they're flying to the ship, he talks about how he's getting tired of being Nick Fury's janitor.
Everyone in his barbershop quartet is dead.
Yeah. Well, but it's also it's the combination.
But just specific. Yeah.
But also the fact that Romanoff has been given a separate mission. He wasn't informed about it.
Yeah, he very much is not in line with knowing what this world of spies and secrets is.
Which is interesting because this is supposed to be 2 years after the Battle of New York. Mm-hmm. So he's been doing this for a while. And so it's not that he's new to it. It's just that it grates against his values.
Yeah.
And that becomes, of course, the one of the core conflicts. Is so he goes to Fury. He confronts Nick Fury about the mission. And so Fury decides to show Rogers what it's about, which is Project Insight, and it's that great reveal. And and the two of you can probably speak to it better than I can, but about how they go for this incredibly intimate moment where you're getting really for the first time this insight into who Fury is as a person.
Yeah,
he tells that great story about his grandfather, the elevator operator.
It's a good scene.
And it leads right into the reveal with that line about how, this is more than a 22.
Because his granddad holds kept a 22 in his lunch pail just in case
with the money. Yeah. So, so Project Insight is there are these 3 next generation helicarriers, basically these flying warships. They're going to have all these guns, and the idea is that they're going to use data to preemptively kill anybody who poses a threat.
And then Rogers is like, I thought the punishment usually comes after the crime.
Yeah.
You're seeing that clash of values. And it's one where Fury is trying to get him on board by pointing out that, I read the SSR files from the war. You guys, you guys did some pretty shady things. Mm-hmm. And Rogers owns up to it, but then he says, we did that to protect freedom. And there's that great line, this isn't freedom, this is fear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and while he doesn't show it, it clearly gives Fury pause.
Yeah.
And so, Rogers leaves. He's still dissatisfied. And if anything, he's more dissatisfied now because he's like, this is not what I signed up for.
Yeah.
And so then he goes to the Smithsonian, and I kind of get why he's there. But it's also
exposition.
Yeah, but it's also
remind the audience about Bucky. Right? So remember this guy?
Yeah, there's 3 things that reminds the audience about Hydra, Bucky, and Peggy. So.
And also where, there's a spare uniform to be found.
That's true.
Yeah.
But it's also, it's just, it serves the story purposes. It's kind of like, okay, it's not like he just got thawed out. There's a little bit of narcissism there. He's going and I like how he's doing it a little
misses the old world,
Yeah. He's kind of doing it in disguise. He's kind of has the hat on. He sees the kid who recognizes him. He's like, don't say anything.
Yeah, I do like that thing that you picked up on of it's kind of his only way to visit the world that he's not in anymore. So
Well, it's not the only one because he goes and visits Peggy.
Yeah, that's true. But
she's got
as
dementia.
we learn, she's I think Alzheimer's or some disease that it's great of like she forgets that they've just been talking and she's like
oh my God,
you're back, and he acts like this is the first time, and he's like, I couldn't have left my best girl.
Totally,
great.
And you also get the fact that even in her dementia. Yeah. She always recognizes him.
Yeah.
She may not know the context, but it underscores the connection between the two.
Yeah. And a good character moment for him to just show like Paddington, that like extreme gentleness he has with like all people, like just the.
Yeah. That's an excellent, it's an interesting comparison. I hadn't really thought about that, but there is that underlying gentleness, which not even, his closest ally in the movie has. I mean, you don't get that from Romanoff.
Totally.
Even she leans into the hardness of it. Because that's what she is.
Yeah.
And then you get then after that he goes and he goes to the veterans group with that Sam is counseling, and they have that the conversation about acclimation, and you get the impression, and I like it because it underscores the fact that as uncomfortable as he is, he's doing this because he doesn't know what else to do.
Yeah. And that's kind of another Paddington comparison that I hadn't thought of his acclimation back to civilian life is, though he's still doing that, but like not fighting in World War II.
That's like coming out of a jungle.
It's very similar to the immigration thing of Paddington coming from Peru to London.
Meanwhile, though, we have Fury beginning to express his doubts, and this is great acting by Samuel Jackson, where he's it's mostly in tone, his face. There's no major expositoriness. He has the drive that Romanoff's retreat for him, but he can't access it. He's beginning to have his doubts, so he goes upstairs and talks to his boss, Alexander Pierce, played by the legendary Robert Redford.
Yeah,
and I love his inclusion in the movie, not only because of the 3 Days of the Condor Association, and I can't remember if this was just fan casting or something that was being talked about, but it's like if you had gone back then and made a Captain America movie in the 1970s, who else would have been cast in it than Robert Redford?
Yeah. There's also All the King's Men.
Oh, All the President's Men.
All the President's Men, of course.
He plays Bob Woodward.
Yeah.
So, so he's like this, he's such a great representative the sort of the decency and goodness of that generation. And he plays that character. He's a former State
That's
Department
great
guy.
casting because it gets you to buy into he's quality guy, and then we find out there's something under the surface.
He's like Tom Hanks in that respect. It's like he's like he exudes decency,
right?
And you get that. I mean, in Nick Fury, a man who is so distrusting that he doesn't even give Captain America the details of the mission.
Yeah.
He just implicitly trusts this guy.
Yeah.
You instantly trust this guy.
Yeah.
Which makes what happens later on in the reveal so great.
Yeah.
So, but he's like, oh, I'm not entirely certain anymore. I want to slow this thing down. And Pierce is like, initially, it's not going to be easy to slow this thing down.
Yeah.
But you're Nick Fury. I trust you. We'll put a halt to Project Insight.
Yeah.
And then Fury is commuting by himself for some reason.
Yeah.
And I just so
this scene is great.
That's
It's
awesome.
It's very Hitchcockian in aside from just, of course, the suspense itself, just the using the police as the bad guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they're all wearing sunglasses. I don't know if you noticed
Yeah.
that. It's kind of similar to Psycho, where it has that dehumanizing effect.
Sure.
And then the most perfect touch of all that they have on there is the computer is like, there are no police in the area, surrounded by police cars. And it's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
I also love how the way that they mislead you. Because you have the scene where right before then, where he's at the stoplight and the police car pulls up, and the two.
You want to see my lease? Yeah.
Want to see my lease? And they kind of do the whole thing with the siren, and then they drive off, and you think that the
It's
tension
over.
ebbs, and all of a sudden, bam!
Yeah.
It's such a great action sequence because he's
And the score too, just that driving.
Yeah. And it has such great pacing, and the way they throw in that one little joke about the air conditioning, it's done in a way that's amusing, but it doesn't distract.
Yeah. And Kita even like imply more that it can do when he's like when he's telling the car like deploy aerial takeoff or something like that. It's like aerial systems malfunctioning or whatever. It's like, okay, well, what can you do? Like let's. I love the how he waits to deploy the countermeasures with the machine gun in the center console. That's a lot of fun too.
And you get a sense as to just how formidable Nick Fury is. Even though all this is happening, he takes out over a dozen of them
with a broken arm.
With a broken arm, exactly. I mean, he shoots his way through the initial ambush. He dodges the chase scene very effectively. I mean, it's believable because Jackson sells. He's injured. He's stressed.
When I watched this movie, this is the scene that I realized. Okay, that's what this character is.
Yeah,
like it's almost like he wasn't in movies before this, as much as. For Sam Wilson's character, it's like, oh, I've seen this guy a lot of times. In Avengers, like he's almost just like a figurehead and you don't really know what he's about. Yeah. But in this one, you get to this scene and it's like, okay, that's who this guy is.
Well, right. It takes someone like the Winter Soldier to, put him down finally. And even that, he can't, keep him down. He gets out with the plasma torch or whatever it is. It can apparently cut through like lightsaber. 7 feet of asphalt, cement.
I think that was an intentional lightsaber reference because of Star Wars.
True.
Star Wars.
I had thought about that. That's a good point. So, and of course, there's like this video game leveling up. He takes out the NPCs, but then here comes the next level threat, and maybe he could have taken out the Winter Soldier or done better if he wasn't already injured. So so then we he's got to find someplace safe to be, and where he goes to Steve Rogers' apartment, and this is where he is there long enough to give Steve Rogers the
tell him on his phone.
Is the drive the MacGuffin?
Yeah, that's it's a MacGuffin.
The flash drive's the MacGuffin. So.
But it doesn't.
Don't they lose it once they get to Zola though?
Yeah, they lose it. Like it leads to the midpoint, and after that, it doesn't. Or a lot of the standard way to use a MacGuffin is to have it pay off in the third act. But in this one, it leads you to the midpoint, and then the story is not about that anymore.
Which is cool for a spy movie, you know. Which is they do that in Skyfall too, and MacGuffin is just a plot device. So
it's not about the MacGuffin. It just needs to do what it needs to do, and then once you do that, you throw it away. But
And it's very effective how they use. I love how he puts it in the vending machine.
Yeah,
and then when he goes to retrieve it, it's gone. You have
that's
that.
good.
Yeah,
She comes back with the bubble gum too. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
That's a,
Yeah, but I loved how. So you have Fury is talking with Rogers, and then of course Fury gets shot, and Rogers goes and chases after the assassin. This is where he gets his introduction to the Winter Soldier, who has that great moment where Rogers throws the shield and the guy catches it with his left hand, no less.
Yeah.
So, and throws it back with such force that it actually knocks Rogers down for a moment.
yeah, I just wanted to touch on one thing we missed real quick. The neighbor.
Sure, yeah.
The nurse and then after this scene, or in this scene, she comes into the apartment as support with a gun, and it's like, what?
Yeah.
And it adds to that sense of mistrust.
Well,
that
totally.
he
Yeah, you
doesn't-
don't feel like you can trust her. You know, Sam
Yeah.
Jackson just got shot, and she's right there all of a sudden. You know.
Yeah.
You have the scene where Fury's on the table. I didn't. It's funny because I've seen this film a dozen times, and I didn't pick up on it until I was watching it. How they frame it to where you're in the observation room, and you have there Steve, Natasha, you have Maria Hill, and they're
in reflection.
Well, no, it's when they're panned back and you see them, and then you have framing them slightly in the shadows.
Yeah.
Rumlow and the other Shield strike guy
Watching them,
Oh,
making
okay.
sure that
I hadn't even
the
noticed
bald
that.
guy and
basically the Hydra people. They're in the shadows. They're there, and they're sort of like and whereas you're seeing them signaling. Okay, these are the ones who are trustworthy. Maria Hill, Natasha Romanoff, Steve Rogers. They're the ones in the light. It was like wow. The way that they subtly do that, and they don't even necessarily, they don't make a thing of it, and so you're getting that foreshadowing as to who's on whose side.
Yeah.
But Fury's dead, and but
By the way, the doctor in that scene is Joe Russo, one of the directors.
Oh.
So it's
Oh, yeah.
Joe and Anthony Russo.
Well, he comes
Yeah.
back when after this. I can't believe, how am I forgetting her name? Scarlett Johansson gets shot, and he's the guy just holding pressure on her shoulder.
Oh, okay.
And that's a weird choice because he's also in Endgame. He's the guy who's at the survivors meeting after the snap talking about how his
that's
husband
true,
died.
yeah.
So
I
he
wonder if
cast
it's the
himself
same
like 3
character.
times. Well, okay, probably just twice, but maybe even just once. Huh? Maybe it's just one character.
He's the doctor in Civil War too. So if there's
really?
a doctor character in the movie, you can be sure it's probably the director.
but it's also I think the idea that he's basically the same doctor. I mean, he's
I
there.
guess I didn't think of that too. Yeah.
In the Johansson scene because there has to be someone on that staff who
Keeping him alive, like keeping Sam Jackson alive.
and who helps him with the deception of pretending that he's dead
I'll
because
sign this death certificate. Yep, he's gone. He's
and also injects
you're at the
Fury
slow his
with-
heart down. And,
with the magical stuff that allows him to pass off being dead. Rogers now he just doesn't know who to trust, so he stashes the MacGuffin in the vending machines we talked about, and then he goes and meets Alexander Pierce, and it's
Again, this is suspense from here on out because he's the only one now that Fury is dead that knows that Shield is compromised.
Yeah.
So
and it's really fascinating the way that this dialogue is written to where you see Pierce as someone who's you feel like he sounds like someone who can be trusted, and yet you go back and rewatch it after having seen it, knowing the twist and everything, and he is basically confessing.
Yeah.
In a way, and it's just really fascinating how that dialogue works both ways.
Yeah.
But you have Pierce, he knows Rogers knows something. Rogers won't tell him.
and Rogers isn't a very good liar, as we've set up earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so Pierce makes the decision, as we'll find out, it was Pierce's decision that they need to take out Rogers. And you get the iconic elevator scene.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
That scene.
Yeah. And talk about suspense. I mean, the way that they do that.
Bigger and bigger guys just keep getting on the elevator back.
Yeah. It's very much like the shot in The Fugitive where he gets on and he's going to see the guy in containment, and all these police officers come on, and it's like, but it would be interesting to see an everyman character play that scene. They'd probably end up dead.
Oh yeah,
but
that's it. Because I mean, all those people on there, these are like highly trained SHIELD agents, and what I love is how the way they do it, where it's initially Rumlow and his number 2, and they get on, and these guys are pretty tough because they were part of that mission at Lemurian Star. Oh yeah, Lemurian Star, and then you get to the elevator stops, and then like another 4 or 5 guys get on.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then the elevator stops, and then another 2-3 guys get on, and it's just the fact that it's like, okay, there's gonna be a fight between him and these 2 guys. Oh no, we're gonna add another, contest. Oh no, we're gonna add 3 more.
They do such a great job of subtly setting it up. The guy's got his hand on his weapon, and then
the guy sweating.
Shot of the guy sweating.
Yeah.
It's so good where they just the looks from Rogers of what is going on here type thing, and just subtle filmmaking that know exactly what's going on, but they're not telling you right in your face.
Well, and as a character, he leans into not being able to lie too, because he just outright says, like, before we do this, does anybody want to get off?
Yeah,
just like,
it's so good.
It's just like,
my favorite line.
Yeah.
That's his character boiled into a nutshell.
Yeah, and not just they can't lie, but he's giving them one last chance to back off.
Like this never works out well for people, man.
Exactly.
I'm telling you, the health insurance plan here is good, but it's not that good.
And you get that wonderful fight scene that climaxes with him taking out Rumlow. Just so I know, this isn't personal.
It's like it kind of feels personal. That's good. And that's they boil down like the whole conflict of the movie into these lines of like they set it up with what his character is of before we start, does anyone want to get out? And then at the end of it, it kind of feels personal of it is. They're coming against his values where he's not getting in line with the what's going on.
Even though you're still not aware as to what's going on, it could very well be that these people are just because Stillwell, he was in Avengers. You are assuming he's still a good guy.
Yeah.
And yet And same is true for Pierce too. Mm-hmm. So when Pierce comes down and says, he lied to us, there's a plausible reason to believe that some of these guys are still good guys.
Yeah. At this point, we don't know that they're outright bad guys. We're in the stage that we think they're still doing their duty. They just think that our main character is the bad guy.
But
they're more antagonists than actual outright villains.
Totally, because we still can see like where their values differ from Captain America, because they're willing to send a dozen guys with guns because they think he's keeping a secret. It's like I don't think Captain America would pull a gun on anybody because they thought there was more they could tell him. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So and we get that later on with the Stillwell interrogation scene.
Yeah. True.
So, but you get he takes out the guys. He then stops. He opens the elevator. There's all the guys with guns.
He just closes it. The guy's like, oh, I don't want to do this.
Yeah, he does his great scene where he slashes the cables with his shield.
Oh yeah, awesome.
And then you get the other one where they're storming. And then you get the nice callback to the earlier scene where he jumps out of the plane because he does the same thing out of the elevator.
Yeah,
true.
Using the shield as a
into
cushion.
the glass roof below. Yeah.
And then he races out. He takes down a Quinjet using just a shield. It really is such a it's like a Swiss Army knife. It's such a useful tool for all sorts of things. Yeah. It was so great. And so now he has to go retrieve the drive, and this is when we find he and Natasha sort of have their denouement. This is much more her world than it is his.
Yeah.
And you get that great line about where he's tired of her attitude, and she's like, well, I just pretend like
I just pretend I'm smart.
Yeah.
I pretend I know everything.
Yeah, exactly. And which of course is I think one of the things that makes the character, not just in the movie, but in the comics, such an effective one, is that she always has that great sense of knowing all the angles even if she doesn't.
Yeah.
But then we get now he has an ally that he is having to trust for the time being. Turns out he can't trust, but he finds out.
Also, they're great foils for each other. Whereas Captain America would be the Paddington of this movie. She's basically the Mr. Brown of this movie.
But you have that great. I love the scene at the Apple store where how she goes from. She goes from like being a first-rate hacker to instantly she's like the bubbly fiance. Yeah. Oh, we're just checking out places to go. Yeah. And then when the SHIELD team is swarming them all, and I love the bit about the the kiss. How she can instantly, play that, and he's still very much, people watch public displays of affection make people come. Well, of course they do.
Yeah, they do. And then she does it, and then he's still uncomfortable as they go off.
It's not what I'd call it.
Again, they have such great chemistry in this, and I feel like they're hinting at this direction that like they did with Romanoff and Banner, they never really fully pursue, which is the hint of a romantic relationship between them.
Yeah.
And they up to this point they hadn't had a solo movie for her, but they have a solo movie for her, and I feel like this is a better display of her character than that movie was.
It's better written.
Yeah.
Of course, the thing about the solo movie is that I feel like it was constrained by the fact that you knew what her fate of her character was going to be. That she was not going to. One, I mean, there's no suspense because you knew she was going to live through the movie. Two, the fact that you knew that she was eventually going to die, so it wasn't like they were really going to do it.
For her solo movie, you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because they wedged that in. They that was a whole, basically a whole flashback movie.
Yeah.
Because they had already killed her off in
Avengers 4, right? Yeah. Well, because doesn't her solo movie take place right after Avengers 2 or something? Isn't that what it is?
I think it's after Avengers 3.
You're right. Yeah. Okay, so yeah.
They say
it's like while people are gone from Thanos or something. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Then we get to that great truck scene where she's like, "How does Captain America know how to steal a car?" And he's like,
Nazi Germany.
And it's not stealing; it's borrowing.
Yeah.
Again, the difference.
Get your feet off the dash.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, Dad.
Yeah.
And then there's great dialogue here where she's like,
again, all improvised.
Yeah. Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. This is stuff they improvised.
Oh, cool. So she's talking about how she can lie and do all these things, and she's fine with it. And
it's also was that your first kiss since you've been thought out of the eyes? I'm 95. I'm not dead.
Yeah.
So it's how she can put him on the defensive like that about something that, especially since he had her on the defensive, she's kind of leveling the playing field a little bit.
Totally.
Yeah. So he's basically the one honest man in this whole thing, and they're great foils for each other.
Yeah.
And of course, he has the knowledge to know that when they get to Camp Lehigh, that and they have that great. It's such a great callback to the first movie. But we have that bunker there. She with all her spy skills,
she's like, there's nothing here.
Yeah, did not realize that was the thing, and he did. Shows how not only the great comments reach.
It
takes the two of them.
And she says there's a chance you might be in the wrong business.
Yeah. So, I like how Captain America knows something's wrong through just like sheer like Hank Hill levels of just knowing regulations. It's just like you can't store munitions that close to a barracks.
Yeah,
like,
that's funny.
You can never do that. Yeah, this is something else.
And then how he's the one that finds the elevator door. Why do you have a why do you hide?
If you're in a secret base already, why do you need to keep the door a secret?
Yeah.
And then we find Arnim Zola, and I have to say, Toby Jones. Anything he does, he's amazing.
Yes. Another Harry Potter alum, Dobby, in the Harry Potter movies.
It's interesting too because they do this thing with Toby Jones in both movies that if you are a comic book geek, you absolutely love. In the comics, Zola he's a biochemist. He's like a genius, a brilliant manipulator of biology. And what he's done is his body is entirely artificial, and he doesn't have a head. His face is in his chest. It's like basically a screen, and he projects and he has his face.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And what makes that interesting is that when you are introduced to him in the first Avenger, you're introduced to him. You're seeing him through a big magnifying glass, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's the face.
Yeah.
And here, they again do the nod because his body is dead,
And he's on a computer screen.
He basically sees computer screens, and Toby Jones is just so fantastic in this one scene that we have him in.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating how
he does a great job of delivering a bunch of exposition in a believable way
it's compelling too,
Yeah, it is compelling. I don't know. Exposition gets a bad rap. Like
Totally.
I really like doing exposition of I don't know. Like when I was a kid, I always like when they explained the technical things or whatever, but
because like filmmaking is showing, don't telling, but there's a lot of times in life you find out about something because someone just explains it to you real quick, so it's I'm with you 100%. I think exposition does get kind of a bad rap,
and at the end of the scene they also say that he was stalling, so
it's how the exposition serves the plot in both ways. Sometimes it's so artificial how artificial it is to have that type of thing, and here it makes perfect sense in retrospect because he's actually just dumping all this information on him, which he knows will be totally useless to them because they're about to die. Just stalling.
A beautiful parasite.
Yes.
Well, and one of my favorite things about this movie too is how it echoes like the real life, like just Operation Paperclip. Like America did take a lot of Nazis after World War II to help them with, the spy game with rockets, with even NATO. The chief of staff for NATO was like a Nazi general for like 20 years. And that's it kind of brings back to what you were saying about the ideals in this movie. That's something I really hadn't thought about until you brought it up, but like how Captain America isn't really comfortable going after terrorists because he's used to fighting the Nazis or fighting space aliens and stuff like that. But now he's having to fight these shadow organizations that kind of come from what America is doing in a way. So it's like he's out of his element completely. The world's changed, and he doesn't feel fit for it, but he's still going to find his way.
This idea that this organization that he defined his life and gave his life at one point, we thought he was willing to sacrifice his life to defeat, has grown up now in the organization that he serves. And it's just such a jarring moment. It's such a brilliant plot device. This idea, which they, to have that in there, it's just so well done. And sort of it implies the degree to which. And this goes back to the message. One of the things in the film is that S.H.I.E.L.D. has gotten away from those values which made America great.
Yeah, it's not just a plot twist. That was weird. It's not just a plot twist for plot's sake. It furthers the narrative of the story of he's the only honest man left in this place, and then it turns out, yes, the whole system is corrupt. And now it comes out, and the whole S.H.I.E.L.D. organization that he's not been comfortable with turns out that it's
and that's something that
could be corrupt to its core,
and that's something that informs that later scene where Fury, who has devoted his life towards building up this organization, he talks about salvaging, and Roger's like, no, we can't salvage. It's the whole thing.
It all goes
but we get the whole thing with Zola. Being and it gets good, but it's the idea that you have this. I just have to make this one last point about it because it's about how you think that here is this, intellect that or the thinks of itself as Zola, and it's still there, and how it's so vulnerable because it's just these banks of magnetic tape and so forth. You imagine that they would just
rot over time,
but also the idea that how easy it would be for Rogers and Romanoff to just plow through it, and yet it's the idea that it's they're in him, and yet he is the one in charge. That he's the one that's the master of the situation, and and that he's willing to give, or it is willing to give its existence to kill them.
Yeah, and I love his last line. Retake. I love his last line where he's like, "We are both of us out of time." Booge.
and then they get away. But then we get this great, so it's like, we got to call up the asset. And then you cut to Pierce at his home, and he's going to the kitchen, and he turns around, and there's the Winter Soldier sitting in shadow. Sorry.
I'm leaving that.
Cut it. He's in the bathroom. He just opens the door. It's like, oh, sorry. He's just not saying anything.
He just does it in the kitchen.
But he turns around, and there's the Winter Soldier, seated at the table. And
Do you like some milk?
Yeah, we like some. It's like up to this moment, you're like, okay, Winter Soldier's there to kill Pierce.
Yeah.
And then it's just, the plan's changed.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah.
You find out Pierce is the big bad.
Yeah.
And then it's underscored in that very scene when his housekeeper returns, and it's Pierce. He doesn't say Winter Soldier killer. He pulls up the gun, boom, boom.
Yeah, operational security. Sorry.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's just,
I wish you hadn't come back.
Exactly. And it's so. Oh, I wish you hadn't come back.
Yeah.
Why don't I kill you anyway? And there's no. There's regret, but there's no hesitation. He's just, she's dead.
Yeah.
And it just kind of underscores how villainous he is, that he's willing to kill what, given the fact that she's his housekeeper and the fact that he apparently is, single. He does have a daughter, although we don't find anything about her. But the idea is that he lives alone in this place, and yet he's willing to kill this person with whom he's...
a woman who does his laundry, is going to just kill her just because she saw a guy with a metal arm in his kitchen, that can't get back. That's and it's cool. Captain America also takes this moment to go get his own help, and he gets Anthony Mackie. He's like, you're a good guy. I know you're an honest guy. Like,
stays in his house.
Yeah.
There's a great line in there of a great callback where she's like, I thought I knew whose lives I was telling, but maybe I don't know anymore. And that sounds very similar to him talking to Peggy earlier, where I thought I could get back and do my duty, but I just don't know anymore. So she's come around to where he is, basically, and then he says the line that she says to her, well, maybe you're in the wrong business.
It also gets to how and we didn't really, I'm going back to that scene in the computer room, where for her, it's more of a shock, because she thinks that she goes, and this again is reference to the previous scene where she always seems to be the one who's always aware of all the angles.
Yeah,
and she was tricked.
She's unquestionably loyal to S.H.I.E.L.D., and whatever mission they give her, she does it.
And she thought that in living in the world of spies, she knew all the angles, that she was aware of what for whom she was working. And it turns out the parasite is so insidious that she has been working for Hydra, and that's where you get that moment of just where she's like, I thought I was turning a leaf when I was by giving up working for the KGB. It turns out I was working for Hydra. It's like she's shaking to her core, because it's the fact that she was played.
Yeah.
And she's usually, and this is the callback in my mind is to the introductory scene of the Avengers, where she's playing the interrogation scene, where she's being interrogated. Turns out she's.
I almost got these guys. Come on, what do you need me to come in for?
Exactly. They're telling me everything I need to know. And it turns out that she ends up playing Loki in later scenes. Yeah. So that's who she sees herself as, and it turns out she's been the one who's been manipulated all along by Hydra.
Yeah,
and it just shakes her to her core. It's just and
she would fit very well into Maverick.
Yes,
another one of those.
Yes,
players.
And this is where Sam's like, he's on board, and we discover that not only is he a former soldier, he's got his own special set of skills.
Yeah,
and they figure out that they figure out through perhaps the dodgiest bit of deduction that it was Pierce that fired the missile. And that Stillwell's in on it, and so they go and retrieve Stillwell. Mm-hmm. And I feel that I can't remember the actor's name, but I feel like he's underutilized. He's really good in The Americans. If you've ever seen that TV show,
I've heard of it. My buddy told me it's really good.
It is, and he's a supporting character in like the first part of it, and he's good at it, and he does such a good job in this role, and but it still feels like they could have done more with him. It's like some of these actors they use in it that they kind of it's a harsh world. They end up getting killed off, but.
Totally. Like, if it was a longer story, I can see how he'd play in somewhere because he's like such a top guy at S.H.I.E.L.D., but he's so obviously one of the like biggest Hydra dudes they have there, like as a plant, you know. And like
well, he's meeting with the Hydra senator, Gary Shanley. This is the last live action role he did before he passed away.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And he is so funny. I mean,
23 years old, wants to be a reporter or something. I don't know. It's just like, what a dirtbag.
He's so slimy. And Shanley does such a good job of it's so effortless on his part to sell the sliminess.
Yeah.
Even before he whispers, "Hail Hydra."
Yeah.
And if you didn't recognize, he's the guy from he's the senator from Iron Man 2.
Mm-hmm. Where he is one of the secondary antagonists to Tony Stark in that great conference scene. You get that bit at the end where you get the double entendre where he's pinning the medal on Stark and about giving him a little prick type of thing. That line there. But you have the interrogation of Stillwell, and it's nicely done where you have both. Rogers is questioning Stillwell, and Stillwell's he's threatening to drop Stillwell off the building, and Stillwell's like, you can't do this. That's not who you are.
Yeah.
And you're right. It's not who I am.
That's what she is.
Yeah.
She just kicks him off, and then they go back to setting him up on a date.
The lip ring, like, I'm not ready for that.
And then it gives the great reveal of, are they going to just let him die? And then he flies up. And
we get introduced to Falcon in all his glory.
Yeah.
And this is where we find out what Project Insight is, which is that it's an algorithm that will identify anybody who's going to challenge Hydra's New World Order and preemptively just wipe them off the map. So basically what Fury had intended would preserve order is being weaponized to go after people. And yet it really is the same mission. It's just whose order. That's being redefined here. And so now they're going to use Stillwell to get into the helicarriers and shut this all down. But, there's some traffic along the way.
That's one of my favorite parts of the movie.
He's done away with very quickly.
He just no ceremony whatsoever. He just grabs him and throws him out of the car. It's just
he gets hit by a semi in the opposite direction. It's like, he's not coming back from this one. So, and then you get this the great action sequence where it's the trio of protagonists fighting the Winter Soldier and a bunch of NPC Hydra agents.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such an effective action sequence where you're seeing the abilities on both sides. You're seeing Black Widow's combat abilities. You're seeing how and her ability to use deception, and you're seeing how effective of a fighter.
Hiding the phone that has her voice on it.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the best knife fights in an American movie in the last 10 years for sure. That part's always a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's so well done. It's also the fact that you have all the civilians and how what's happening to them. So it's a fight that has very real consequences. You see people that are like it's happening amid the way they do it in the scene. I think of an everyday American city is very well done.
Yeah.
Which is similar to what they did at the earlier scene with Fury and the chase scene, because that's done through traffic. It's not like some of these movies where all of a sudden the traffic is magically clear.
I'm glad you pointed that out, because they used that opportunity in the Nick Fury chase scene where the guy's shooting through a bus of people to get him. It's like, they bad guys. They
don't think twice about civilian casualties. And it gets to a line you hear later at the end of the movie where Rumlow is talking about how, I can't remember the exact phrasing, but something along the lines of, we're imposing an order, and, there's going to be pain in imposing the order. Mm-hmm. Of course, it always is meant to be the other person's pain, never theirs. But you do have and of course I love how it ends, because it doesn't end with them defeating the guys. It doesn't end with them escaping the Winter Soldier. It ends with the Hydra agents disguised as S.H.I.E.L.D. agents showing up and arresting them.
Yeah.
So and the only thing that saves them is the fact that there's
People are watching.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like, okay, it's over for the characters.
Yeah.
And they're being, driven off to be, executed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
But then who's there to save the day? Maria Hill.
Yeah.
The next person they know they can trust.
Yeah. With another lightsaber to dig through 10 feet of concrete.
Yes.
Just right in time to see Mace Windu still alive.
Yeah.
So, and that's where we get the big reveal that there's. I had to say, I still didn't quite pick up on the fact because the way that Jackson delivers the dialogue, that the thing that saves him is something that Bruce Banner came up with to try to control the transformations of the Hulk.
Yeah.
And what fails for him can nonetheless reduce a person's heartbeat to 1 beat a minute.
Yeah.
And that's how he gets away with it with the help of the doctor.
That's always fun comic book stuff too. Just like stuff that's tangential.
It's the notion of that is one of the things that makes the MCU as enjoyable as it is, which is the notion of the shared universe.
Yeah.
So you don't have to explain who Bruce Banner is. We already know who he is from 2-3 other movies. But this, and then of course you have Fury's like, this guy was my friend. He declined the Nobel Peace Prize for reasons that I thought were fully honorable. This is why I can't trust anybody.
Yeah, it gives me trust issues. Yeah.
They have to figure out how they're going to stop this from happening. Of course, then is it maybe here where you get the? Is it are the 3 new chips the MacGuffin now, or is it just?
No, so those are basically plot devices.
Okay.
I have a similar thing in one of my scripts. It's a very common third act thing where you've got to, like, they've got it in Fringe. Several episodes have this where they have to get 3 beacons to a place, and in the second Thor, think whatever you want of that movie, but they've got to get 4 beacons to the right places, or 2, or I don't know, but it gives a nice thing that they have to do that's something that you can keep track of. So they've got these 3 chips that they have to put on the helicarriers to take control of them.
And so now that becomes the climax of the movie is the big battle to do that, where they have to, and keep in mind they have to sneak into the S.H.I.E.L.D. facility to do that, which is no easy feat.
Yeah. Give a big Captain America speech over the intercom to tell people what's up.
Alerting, all the good guys in S.H.I.E.L.D. And you get the impression S.H.I.E.L.D. is still majority good guy. I mean, a Parasite is not the great
Yeah,
guy.
that's
the guys
the
that don't wanna
most.
help 'em.
Yeah, that's the most. If it were just all bad guys in it, that would just be so boring.
They're just
But
all
that's
grinning
the-
evil. Like,
Yeah, that would be. That's
God.
the most interesting thing about that scene, and I like how it plays out in the control room.
Yeah, you get the great
where
standoff.
The tension,
Yeah.
the guy who doesn't want to help him, he's like telling him with a
He's
gun
like,
to his
I'm
head.
not,
Like,
I'm not doing it. Cap's orders, and then he's like, you chose the wrong side, and then she holds the gun up to him, and it's like, depends on where you're standing.
right, yeah.
It's so good. I love that.
And then, but we also get a sense as to how good Rumlow is, because he drops his gun, and yet nonetheless manages.
Disarms her.
Yeah, he disarms her. He's shooting at her. He's able to begin the process of launching the helicarriers, and so and which of course get this great scene about these. And it's a nice ticking clock that isn't strained. The notion of these gigantic craft having to reach a certain height to be able to do their job. And that it gives them a certain amount of time in which to complete.
You don't have to show a timer. You just physically very easily see, they're going up in the air.
Yeah.
It's going to blow up.
Which adds to the challenge of reaching each one of them.
Yeah.
And so you've got that going on, and it helps that you have one of the people doing can fly, and that's Sam Wilson, and he's helping Cap, and so they're doing on their respective things. And I like how these S.H.I.E.L.D. agents want to go help them, and so they're like, "We got to get out there. We got to go help Rogers. We're only backup," and then they all get wiped out by the Winter Soldier.
Yeah. I hadn't noticed this scene before, but that was hard to watch.
It was hard to watch, but it's such a great scene for underscoring that
how effective he is,
and why how truly threatening Winter Soldier is, and why it is that all these SHIELD agents they try to help out.
Yeah, there's this entire field of planes that's about to take off with these people, and he one by one takes them all out, and then there's just one airship left that he flies up towards the ship.
Well, I think watching the Winter Soldier like really just tear those people apart really underscores like how like say SHIELD is Captain America's role in the world just without his morals like taken to an extreme. Like the Winter Soldier is Captain America if he didn't have those morals too. I mean, it's just how dangerous he'd be, how good he'd be at just killing anyone he wanted.
Yeah, that's true.
If you know, he wasn't the guy he was. So
he's basically Jason Bourne getting knocked out in the first movie.
Yeah.
Adding a metal arm to it and super soldier serum.
Yeah.
So
simultaneously, you have the confrontation in the meeting room with the World Security Council. Pierce has, put on his black hat, so to speak, and but then it turns out that one of the members is secretly the Black Widow.
Yeah.
And she, I'm sorry, did I trip on your moment? And Fury has his big reveal. The idea is that they're going to expose Hydra to the world, and in doing so, because Hydra functions in the shadows, and this is how we're going to expose it. It's some nice acting with especially between Redford and Jackson.
Yeah,
where and it kind of underscores the fact that one of the reasons that made Hydra so effective is that what they're doing is how fundamentally different is it from what SHIELD does.
Yeah,
what they're intending, it's the idea that the goals of the bad guys are not that much different, and it's one of the reasons why they were able to get as far as they did. Is that they've gone from what and of course the moral center being Rogers, he's been critiquing this from the beginning.
Yeah,
and he didn't exactly keep it to himself. He says to Fury, "This is fear." That's what Hydra's trying to do. That they're going to intimidate everybody into obeying their order.
Yeah.
And
I love that they keep it in the real world grounded thing of like, this is a real world thing that we deal with of, do you sacrifice safety for security? And there's a Thomas Jefferson quote that
Benjamin Franklin.
Benjamin Franklin that I can't remember
where
what it is.
he would sacrifice somebody for security. Deserves neither. That one.
Yeah. Anyway, but it's great that they inject that into this plot without like taking you out of it. It completely organically fits with who Captain America is as a character and the whole bit. But then on the did you?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So then on the Captain America side, they sneak into this control room, which is run by Abed from Community. I don't know if you guys recognize him, but he's it's because the Joe and Anthony Russo were Community directors, so they have.
That's how they got this job. Was the two when they directed.
Also, Arrested Development, and anyway, so a lot of actors from Community are in the Marvel movies that they've directed, and but then Captain America gives the speech to everybody saying that Pierce is Hydra and also the Strike and Insight teams. I don't know who else. And then his exact line is, "I know I'm asking a lot, but the price of freedom is high, and it's a price I'm willing to pay. And if I'm the only one, so be it." And then it follows up with that scenes of we see there's at least two people on Cap's side in SHIELD, and then we see these guns everywhere, and it's not clear where the lines lie. But
you just know that Rumlow is definitely Hydra.
For sure.
Yeah.
And then I love the line as they're running to Cap and Falcon are running to go fight the bad guys. He's like, "How do we tell the good guys from the bad?" And he's like, "The bad guys will be shooting at you."
And they assume correctly that everyone aboard the helicarriers are the bad guys.
Yeah.
Which, of course, means that when they do take them down, it's not like they're sacrificing the lives of innocents.
There's a bunch of crypto Nazis working for the CIA. And I was like,
right.
So you have this, the battle, and they replace 2 of the ships, and of course it's always that third one that's going to be the challenge, and and that's when Winter Soldier gets up there, and he and Cap have it, and of course Cap is constrained by the fact.
I just want to touch on what you said real quick. And I do this in one of my screenplays, but you make the first couple, if you got 3, you make the first couple pretty easy for the side characters to do, and then you give the hard one to the main character, and they're the ones that have the struggle of getting it in there. And that's where the suspense comes from, of how close is he to putting that thing in the thing.
Yeah.
And Winter Soldier in this fight keeps hacking at him while he's just trying to get that thing in the slot.
And Cap will not unleash himself against him because he's his friend Bucky, as he discovered. Left out this part during the big fight on the freeway, which was that Bucky, whom he thought had died in World War II, has been this Winter Soldier who's been functioning as an assassin for half a century.
Yeah,
and he doesn't want he needs to complete this mission, but he's also trying to save his friend at the same time.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because there's a flashback after he finds out that it's Bucky, and they're talking on the bridge, and Sam is, this is not the flashback yet, but Sam is like, I don't think he's the kind you,
Nobody else but Captain America believes that the Winter Soldier can be redeemed, and then they have the flashback of him helping him before he got the super soldier serum.
But he's like, I don't think he's the kind you save, he's the kind you stop.
Yeah.
And then we have the flashback of him helping him after his mother passed away, and he's like, you can stay at my house, and he's not taking him up on it.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm with you to the end of the line.
Yeah.
And then that's a big setup for later on. And they're doing it at exactly the right place of right before Act 3, before this comes in.
Because right before that is also when Pierce goes to see the Winter Soldier right after that, and he's just like, mission report. He's just like, what am I doing? Where am I? Like, what are you and they just got to re-brainwash him. And they got to, just keep turning that mind to soup. And very tragic,
Which gets to another example of the distinction of the values, which is that, Steve is treating him like a human, and they're treating him like a weapon, and that's all he will ever be to them.
Yeah.
There's a tragedy to that character.
Enormous.
Totally.
And that's one of the things that makes you sympathetic towards the goal, is that at the end of the day, Winter Soldier is a tragic character. He is a person. He's even more than Captain America. He is the ultimate soldier, because he is a person who's been stripped of his humanity. He's been reduced to a tool.
Only takes orders.
And who even to the point where he's been weaponized against his own country.
Yeah.
And he is just lashing out, and just because they're the ones that happen to be pulling the strings. So.
Yeah.
But you have the climactic scene where you have even though the Winter Soldier and Cap are doing this drag out fight, and they're both heavily injured, that Cap gets the chip in time. And
I just want to do one more setup before, like at the beginning of this fight, he's like, when we see that he's there, he's like, please don't make me do this. And that's great character writing of you have a moral paragon of a character. You test him at every stage to see if he's going to stay up to those values. And he's between a rock and a hard place at this point of he's got to fight his best friend that he knows is a good guy to be able to save all these people. And anyway, so it's a great dramatic setup.
And it's fortunate that he's never had to make that choice of, does he need to kill his friend to complete his mission?
Yeah.
He's going to try to avoid that. He thinks he can. Unfortunately, he can. It almost would have made a more interesting moral development, but then that's not the purpose of the movie. So, but you have the chip going in. They successfully reprogram the carriers, and it's such a satisfying scene to where they go from they're about to massacre hundreds of thousands of people to they each have one target. Whoop, the guns go to each other.
Well, 3 targets. It goes from like 20 million targets to 3. And it's like, what?
And they just start blasting each other to smithereens. And it's
$40 billion down the drain,
and it's I went. You
Probably more than that. You're right. But like,
Yeah, and there's kind of a
$4
blink and
trillion
you'll miss it moment before that of Cap is on the ship, and she's like, "Okay, get off the ship so we can blow them up." He's like, "No, do it now." And she's like, "But Cap," he's like, "Do it."
Yeah.
He's got that self-sacrificing side that he's gonna have an arc for that later on, where he learns to, in Endgame, where he learns to take some for himself sometimes, but
yeah.
he's very much the anti-Iron Man of he's not a selfish character.
Totally.
which is something that Whedon plays up a lot in the first one. So
Yeah.
the one of the things though I like about when the carriage takes each other down is that it's not just boom, they're down. It's drawn. It's like the next 5 minutes. It's in the background. There's blazing away at each other.
Yeah.
And so you get this great, chaotic, explosive sequence. It's not just, one big fireball rolling against constantly. And that's the context of, Cap is on the carrier. Winter Soldier's pinned down. He's trying to save his friend.
Yeah.
And then of course you have the with the slow motion descents, especially the one where that crashes into the shield building.
Yeah.
And which interrupts the fight between Rumlow and Wilson. And I like the fact that Rumlow's winning that fight, because you think that Sam Wilson, even though he was this brave soldier who had been decorated, he was this great hero. He's not the ruthless combatant that Rumlow is.
Yeah.
And so Rumlow's winning that fight, and then it's all preempted by the helicarrier just crashing into him.
Yeah, I love that he makes his bad guy speech, and he's like, "Man, shut that crap up."
Yeah, it was great. It looked like they had a lot more of that fight filmed too, and they still left a good bit of it in. But I would be very interested in seeing what else they filmed for that.
Yeah,
it's probably fun.
But then we go back up to the last of the fight between Cap and Bucky, and he's wailing on him, and he's like, Cap or Bucky is wailing on Cap, and he's like, "I'm not gonna." He's like, "Fight me!" He's like, "I'm not gonna fight you. You're my friend." And he's like, "You're my mission." And punches him, and then he tells him, "Sorry, this is great storytelling. This is how you know it works." He's like, and then he says, "Then finish it, because I'm with you to the end of the line."
Yeah. It goes back to that notion you were just talking about, a sacrifice. He's willing to sacrifice his life to help reach his friend.
Right.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he doesn't have to go quite that far, but it's because it works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so then they fall into the Potomac, and it's the Winter Soldier who saves Cap.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then he goes off to figure out who he is.
Yeah, and then we have a montage of what's happening with all our characters post this
to a great Marvin Gaye song, which again, nice callback to the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, and then in the hospital room when they start up the song, he's just laying in bed, and you're wondering, is he gonna wake up? And then he wakes up, and he's like, "On your left."
Yes, and you notice he is on.
Yeah, he is on his left.
Yeah. It's just so nicely done. But we also see that you have then the Romanoff's testimony to the panel, and you have the idea now is that the new mission is for him is to take out the rest of Hydra, and Cap's mission is to go find his friend.
Yeah, and they do a great set. I don't know. There's a thing with Marvel movies where they always go into the next one, but I think they do a great balanced job of doing it. Of when do we start, and then boom, 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 boom. Yeah. That's our review of Captain America: Winter Soldier, and now we go crisscross.
Every once in a while, two films will share a bond to transcend time, space, and even genre. These similarities go down to their DNA, so let's dissect and deconstruct, compare and contrast. It's time to go crisscross.
Crisscross.
Yeah, so the first point that I have, I need to give some context for. A conventional arc is a change arc, for a character arc, for how the character changes from the end of the movie the end of the movie, how it changes from the beginning of the movie to the end. And usually it's a positive change arc. Occasionally there's a negative arc, as in like The Godfather. Those are usually like cautionary tales. But for these two movies, it's something that's called a flat arc. So...
What is a flat arc?
What is it? I'm glad you asked, Mark. Yeah, so a flat arc is where the main character does not change all the way through the movie. And you might ask, like, how is it a story if there's no change? The world changes around them.
Yeah.
They change the world for the better. I guess you could do a negative flat arc where they make the world a worse place.
Been there, man.
But, yeah. That's what a flat arc is, and both Paddington and Captain America have those.
One of the things that stands out for me is, in terms of the comparison, is why they have a flat arc. Mm-hmm. And that's because while both Paddington and Captain America are realized characters, they're also national symbols.
Oh, okay,
and
yeah.
they represent this. They represent national ideals. With Steve Rogers, you have that decency, that forthrightness. He's always been written as this figure who represents the best of America. You know, always standing up for truth and justice, and always standing up for the little guy against the evil values. I mean, the way he was introduced to the world was he's punching out Adolf Hitler.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
And so he is always represented as the best. That's why he was so controversial when a few years ago Marvel had him become a villain.
Yeah, you don't do that with Cap.
Yeah.
I wrote that Cap is a moral paragon of old-fashioned American values.
Exactly. And Paddington's the same way. He represents kindness, open-mindedness, tolerance, everything that the British, like to think of themselves as being, that they're decent and friendly and polite. That's who Paddington is. Mm-hmm. So in that sense, they are both these yardsticks by which the characters around them are being measured.
Yeah.
And in a sense, by not measuring up to them, it's the characters that have to get back in on board. They have to they're the ones that have to change to live up to the standard.
Yeah, and I like, though, how they do a bit of a fake out with Paddington, where he's a bit of a klutz. He messes up a lot of stuff, and you think, oh, he's got to change by the end. And it gets you in the heartstrings because of that, because it's like, oh, I don't know. I guess that's why I was crying at the end of this thing of like, you feel like you are not acceptable as a human being the way you are. And you've got to change to match whatever standard that you see out there that you're not matching up to. But Paddington realizes by the end of it, just by being who he is, he's made the world a better place. And it ends on that great line of,
"Yeah, I'm Paddington." But he's also like Captain America in another respect, because what Paddington and his aunt and his uncle are in the beginning is they're these preserved examples of older Englishness.
Yeah.
The Englishness that they've been introduced to is the Englishness of a previous generation, much in the way that
preserved like marmalade.
Exactly. Or preserved in ice, if you will. Yeah. So, and how he's being introduced into present day England, and there's a sense as to how far England has strayed from those values, the days where they would, and again, this is more ideal than reality, but nonetheless, the idea that they would just willingly accept people who show up needing help with nothing more than a card on a string around their necks type of thing.
Yeah.
Oh, true. Yeah, that's a great symbolism for like immigrants too, like how they made people at Ellis Island, and I'm sure in England too, where a tag that says where they're coming from. He just has something from his aunt, says, "Please take care of this bear." And it really does say, it's like, how awful of a person would you have to be to find poor little Paddington and not want to help him?
And yet that's exactly who they're at the beginning. They're like, don't make eye contact. We're going to ignore the bear in need of help.
He's going to steal our silverware and sell it for drugs.
And that gets to another commonality I find between the two, which is how in both of them it's about why it is that we've strayed so far from these ideals, which is that we're constantly dealing with fear. And both of them, I think, are very much movies of their time in the sense that they express that. With
there's the safety parallel between them.
Yeah.
There's the sacrificing your freedom for safety. And
how much we've already given up in that process, about how we don't even recognize ourselves anymore. We still think we're these people, and yet we need these paragons from the past to say to us, this is not who we should be. This is not who we were. We've lost something in the process. In Winter Soldier, it's the post 9/11 fear of these bad guys, these terrorist threats out there. In Paddington, it's the xenophobia, the fear of these immigrants. And this is something that Britain has been, wrestling with really since the end of the Second World War. From that moment of the finest hour in its wake, it became this challenge of immigration that Paddington embodies. In that sense, he represents both the traditional values and the thing that they fear.
Yeah, I put down, this is very close to what we're talking about, virtuous main character in a corrupt/flawed world.
Yeah.
And that gap between who we are and who we want to be, and how challenging it is to be that. And that goes back to the arc that you were talking about. I mean, the struggles that they have to go through, some of them, it's less of a struggle than others, but at the end of the day, the acknowledgement that we really do need to change if we want to aspire to be who we want to be.
Yeah, and this is how a good Superman story is told, by the way. I hope the new one that's coming out, it very much seems like that's the route they're going. But Man of Steel was very much not knowing what it wanted to be. It just wanted to be cool.
I want to have explosions.
Yeah.
I want to show people flying.
But
I want to show Superman as a godlike character.
Yeah. That's how you do a character like that, though. They're not just amazingly whatever on the outside. They're also on the inside, and that's the virtue of Paddington and Captain America shines through, and they change the world. They make the world a little brighter around them just by being there.
Just being an unmovable moral goodness,
Yeah.
Even though both characters are themselves flawed, even though neither of them are perfect, neither of them are unaspirable, they're also facing their struggles. But at the end of the day, even with those struggles, they're able to be better, and they're able to provide us with examples of how we can be like them.
Yeah.
And we see that you said in both movies that how they reach that. They're not quite there yet, but they're getting there. How the Brown family has become more open, accepting, and tolerant, and embracing true Englishness, and about how you have Nick Fury literally burning down his old life to do what needs to be done.
Yeah, they stick to their guns or their marmalade, whichever one you choose.
Well, no, I'm kind of amazed at how much these line up, because when you pitched this one, I didn't really know how they were going to line up. I hadn't seen Paddington. It had been quite a few years since I'd seen Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
But, I think you guys laid it out perfectly. Yeah,
Cool. Well, star ratings. So... it's the part I always forget. Okay, so our star ratings for Paddington. Let's start with you, David.
Oh, man, I hadn't thought about what I would give them as a star rating. I don't have a letterbox or anything like that. I'm kind of... I don't see it as my place to give star ratings, but I'm going to give Paddington 5 stars, because what kind of person would I be if I didn't give this adorable, wonderful bear 5 stars? The 5 stars he deserves.
Yeah.
Oh man, when you put it like that, I can't give it. I feel.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, when I finished watching the movie, it was charming. I was definitely more in the 4-star camp, but after talking about it, I also have to give it 5 stars.
Well, because they do such a good job of, like, it has so many just fun little silly gags. It is like there's constantly a fun little silly gag.
Yeah,
going.
there's the
and when there's not, it's sad. It's like you feel for Paddington.
Must have dogs. And,
right.
Or must carry dogs. And
he's the guy's dog.
Must stand on the left.
This one must be yours.
Stands on his left foot.
No, stand on the right.
Oh yeah,
He's
stand on your right.
When you ride the underground, you're going down the escalators. They please stand to the right to make room for.
Yeah.
So somebody's trying to rush to get to their train. So.
Yeah. And we're giving a star rating to Captain America. Man, I'll say enough has been said about, people saying, these are tentpole films, not real cinema, so to speak.
Okay.
That's
sorry,
fine.
I didn't get mine.
Oh, my bad. My bad. Yeah, go.
Yeah. So, 5 stars. I can't not know.
5-star movie.
But yeah, it's interesting going into this. I'm like, am I gonna like Paddington? Because I've seen it before once.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. I don't know. I just fell in love with this movie. It's just
Right. I want to watch the second one.
Yeah, I got to watch the second one now too.
Because they're making a third one.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be there opening week. We should all go. Are you guys down to see Paddington when it comes out?
Sure,
I'm down to go.
yeah.
It'll be interesting because the filmmaker behind the first 2, he's not doing the third one.
Oh, really? Okay, so maybe it drops off.
Hopefully it
What if
stays.
Paddington 3 has Ewoks? Like there's Ewoks.
It's the Star Wars crossover. WB and Disney are getting together.
Yeah, right. You cannot hit people with logs unless they've done something terribly cross to you. It's like,
I am going to give you a hard stare.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so let's get into our star reviews of Winter Soldier.
So Winter Soldier, I think this is one of the best MCU movies by a mile. I mean, it's like they did have to make it stand up if they're going to put Robert Redford in it. It's like they're going for classic spy thriller. I think it does more with the story. I hadn't even really thought about how much strength there is to the themes behind the characters until we were really talking about this, because it's something every like superhero movie should have, but it seems done a little bit more tastefully here. I got to give it 4 stars. I'd be comfortable even giving it more, but it's a good movie. I really like it.
For me, it's 5 stars. I mean, I have
totally.
I mean, as you might have guessed, I'm a huge fan of the comics. I've really, I mean, the past decade and a half of MCU for me, it has been really a wonderful experience in terms of not just enjoying good movies, but also connecting with these artifacts of my youth.
Totally.
And some of what they do with it is a little dodgy sometimes, but I feel like the Captain America, those 3 films that have come out so far, there are rumors that a 4th one is coming out shortly.
Yeah. I really hope it's good. I
have some questions about it, but at the same time, I feel like the first.
By the way, this episode is leading up to the release of both the sequels to those movies. So.
Oh, true. It is, huh? Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But I feel like the Captain America ones are the most solid of all of these multi-film character studies within the MCU.
Yeah, this one could easily be standalone.
Yeah, and all 3 of them really can be.
Yeah,
I mean the third one, because it fits more within what the Avengers are doing.
Yeah,
it is a little bit less so. But I just feel like they're very well done, so much better done than the Thor movies. I mean the Iron Man ones are so kind of all over the place. Mm-hmm. This one I feel like the quality is so consistent. And while the first one I probably have more affection for because of the the setting and everything, I mean this is definitely the best of the 3. It's 5 stars for me.
Cool. Well, I'm going to surprise you guys. 5 stars.
Well, you guys convinced me. I'm going to give it 5.
I might give it 4 stars, but that 5 star is really just my favorite thing. Like it's just, I don't know, maybe the patriotism and just the, I don't know. It's very much a movie made for me, basically.
There's so many little things there. Like we didn't even talk about how at the beginning of the movie, the uniform, the costume that Roger's wearing, the Captain America uniform, it's black, gray,
tattered out, made for stealth.
Yeah, exactly, stealth. But it's also
shields faded.
That notion of the it's the notion of the grays.
Yeah.
And then when you get to the climax, he goes to the museum, he goes to the Smithsonian, and he retrieves his old one, and so he's again, by representing those values right before he gives a speech, he's again brightly dressed in the red, white, and blue.
They're true.
Mm-hmm. So.
True to himself. Yeah.
Exactly.
True, yeah.
He's finally found, he's rediscovered what he's about.
But I just think you couldn't find a better example of a flat arc movie than this one,
Yeah.
except for maybe Paddington. But it's, I don't know, Paddington is winning me over. It's
so good, man.
Yeah, it's a good one. Cool. Okay, so our next episode will be Ocean's 11, 1960 and 2001, with Hugh Escarpetta, who is the star of our short film Time Hunt. Go watch that now. It's on this channel. So if you'd like to get access to bonus features and deleted clips from Criss Cross and our sister show Facets of Story, please support us on Patreon at patreon.com/Transcend Entertainment. That's TRNSCEND Entertainment. And that's it for today's episode. Thanks for watching the CRISS CROSS Cinema Podcast.
But you wouldn't clap yet, because making something disappear isn't enough. You have to bring